There have been a few comments telling me that my video on the 18th of October on Prince Andrew's titles needs updating and is wrong. It doesn't. Nothing that I said in that video has been contradicted by yesterday's announcement from Buckingham Palace, nor is it incorrect. Indeed, on the 20th of October, 2 days after I published that, David Torrance, a constitutional expert who works for Parliament, issued a document with advice to Parliament on this matter that entirely backs up my conclusions. You can read it for yourself. The link is below. Even after yesterday's very oddly worded announcement, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, as we're now supposed to call him, remains in law Duke of York, Earl of Inverness and Baron Killalea. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor had of course agreed to stop using those titles in public, but the King has gone a little bit further now, though not quite as far as people assume. He hasn't stripped Andrew of his peerage titles in any substantive manner, but has instead started a formal process for the removal of them. He has in effect formalised their disuse. You may say that I'm splitting hairs, but for the reasons I outlined in the last video, to strip Andrew of his peerages in a substantive manner would still require an Act of Parliament. So what precisely has the King done? Well, he has done something rather subtle. He has sent a document called a royal warrant to the Lord Chancellor, the MP David Lammy, requesting that Andrew's titles be struck out of a document called the Roll of the Peerage. A royal warrant is a piece of paper bearing the King's sign manual, his signature, and it is traditionally used when the sovereign instructs an official to do something on his behalf, exercising his prerogative powers. The Roll of the Peerage is a document of record that is maintained by the Crown Office, which is why the Lord Chancellor, as head of that office, is involved in the process. The roll itself is kept and updated by an official called Garter Principal King of Arms, who is the head of the Heralds of the College of Arms. He was the man who at the funeral of Queen Elizabeth II read out the late sovereign's styles and titles. I noticed when I went to look at the roll today on the College of Arms website that the Duchy of York has already been struck from the record. Now, the Roll of the Peerage sounds like an ancient document, but it's quite a new thing. It has only existed since 2004. It was created in the wake of the House of Lords Act of 1999, which stripped hereditary peers of their automatic right to sit and legislate in the House of Lords. Previously, new peers, on succeeding or being granted a title for the first time, would receive a writ of summons from the sovereign to attend Parliament. They were then introduced to the House of Lords and enrolled in a document called the Register of the Lords Spiritual and Temporal, which was kept by the Clerk of the Parliament. Indeed, in 1986, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor did just that. Now, with hereditary peers excluded from Parliament in 1999, except for 92 elected peers, the register was no longer a complete record of all hereditary peerages, and this new document, the Roll of the Peerage, was created through a royal warrant of Elizabeth II to serve that purpose. One of the provisions in the original warrant for the creation of the roll in 2004 was that the peers enrolled in it had the right to have their peerages struck from the roll at their request. So Andrew could have requested that had he wished to. But there is no provision for anyone else, even for a sovereign, to remove peers from the roll, so we are in new legal territory here. It has been assumed that as the roll exists through a royal warrant, the King can change the contents of the roll through another royal warrant, which is what has happened in the case of Prince Andrew. It is still unclear whether the King actually has that right, or if it is legal. It certainly sets up a new and interesting precedent. The warrant creating the peerage roll is clear that any peer who is not enrolled in it is therefore not entitled to use their titles. They're not entitled to any precedence attached to their peerage, nor can they be addressed or referred to by their titles in any context. It is important to make it clear that striking off or not being entered into the roll doesn't dissolve the peerage. The peer remains a peer, but they simply cannot use the titles in public. So Andrew's peerages have not been stripped from him, they are not vacant as such, and they cannot be granted to someone else until he dies. Indeed, if Andrew were to have a son, that son could still register a claim to inherit his peerages and be enrolled in the peerage roll. This way of dealing with this matter was of course not possible until 2004, and it is a clever way of appearing to be doing something without really doing anything permanent. If the accusations against Andrew were judged by a court of law to be unfounded, he could have his titles re-entered into the peerage roll and take them up again, without the need for a new letters patent to be issued by the king to recreate him as Duke of York. This process also neatly avoids another route, which is to formally and permanently strip Andrew of his peerage titles via an Act of Parliament. Parliament may yet decide to do this and introduce a bill, but the initiative for this would have to come from members of Parliament, not from the king. As it stands, this neat little device of striking the peerages from the roll circumvents the scandal and damage to the reputation of the royal family that would inevitably ensue if a bill was introduced to Parliament and was then debated in the House of Commons and Lords. Now, what of Andrew's former princely title? Well, that is much more easily stripped from him than his peerages, and it is just as easily returned. British princely titles are governed by letters patent under the Great Seal, issued by King George V on the 30th of November 1917. Children of the sovereign and children of the sons of the sovereign are all entitled from birth to enjoy the style, title or attribute of Royal Highness, with their titular dignity of Prince or Princess affixed to their respective Christian names. Andrew was therefore His Royal Highness the Prince Andrew from birth. Until yesterday it was entirely up to Andrew whether he wanted to use those styles, titles and dignities, and it's not obligatory to do so. There is ample precedent for individuals not using that right. Indeed, the children of the Duke of Edinburgh, the Earl of Wessex and Lady Louise Windsor are entitled to use the style of Royal Highness and the titular dignity of Prince and Princess, but choose not to. Andrew, of course, said that he would cease to use the style of Royal Highness in 2022, but in his statement 12 days ago he said he would continue to use the titular dignity of Prince. With respect to this matter, the king can really do what he likes. He can strip anyone he wishes of the princely dignity and elevate anyone he wishes to it. He could even make me a prince if he wanted to. As this issue is governed by letters patent that operate under the sovereign's reserve powers, the royal prerogative, the king must issue a royal warrant under his sign manual for the affixing of the Great Seal to a new letters patent that specifically revoke the princely status from Andrew. And he can do this without any recourse to Parliament, and this is seemingly what he has done. He has, with the stroke of his pen, as is his right, reduced his brother to the status of a commoner. Of course, Beatrice and Eugenie, Andrew's children, remain Royal Highnesses and Princesses by virtue of the 1917 letters patent, for despite their father's degradation, they are still children of the son of a sovereign. It would require a separate letters patent to strip them of their titles and styles. What of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor's Knighthoods? He is a Knight Companion of the Order of the Garter and a Knight Grand Cross of the Royal Victorian Order. Now, if his princely dignity is removed, they too have to go, as otherwise he'd be quite within his legal rights to call himself Sir Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. As I said in my last video on this subject, he doesn't hold these knighthoods by right. Membership of both orders is in the direct gift of the sovereign, and degradation of individuals at the sovereign's will has considerable precedent. Andrew's banner and his crest as a Knight of the Garter have already been removed from St George's Chapel, Windsor. One thing the king cannot remove is Andrew Mountbatten Windsor's position in the line of succession. He remains 8th in line to the throne. The succession is governed by Act of Parliament, and it requires an Act of Parliament to remove someone from it. That, of course, has been done in the past, in the late 17th and early 18th century, and you never know, it might be done again. But I think Parliament will want to avoid that, given Andrew hasn't actually been convicted of a crime in a court of law. As for the matter of Royal Lodge, what can I say? Nothing changes. The King can't kick him out, and his lease was watertight, and very probably still is. He must be leaving of his own volition. Indeed, we know that all of the actions yesterday were made entirely with Andrew's consent. Thanks for watching. If you enjoy this channel, you're bound to enjoy my magazine, The Antiquary. Published every month, it is a labour of love for me, and in it I explore some of the more obscure aspects of our shared history, all beautifully illustrated in full colour. It ships across the world, is offered in print and digital format, and readers give it 5 stars on Google. If you love your history like me, particularly the history of objects, buildings, people and places, why not consider subscribing? Subscribing helps support my work and the channel too. There's a link above and in the video description that takes you to the magazine website.